Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa. On today's episode, we're talking Roberto Olabe, Aston Villa's new recruitment guru that's going to be aiding Aston Villa's transfer activity. And we're going to be picking 5 things that Olabe must do at Aston Villa. I've set Earl some homework. I don't know what Earl's come up with. He doesn't know what I've come up with. So we're about to showcase what we've come up with. But how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I've got my notes ready today, so I've come prepared.
Yeah, he's done his homework. Right, I'll kick it off then. I'll kick it off with my first one. And Villa fans, play along at home. Drop your 5 things. They can be quite funny if you want to put funny ones. And what I'll do is I'll pin the funniest comment so everybody can see that first. So we'll go through it, and if someone puts something funnier, then I'll relegate that one and put someone next up that's got a better one. Or if it's just a really good one, I'll pin that every time that there's a really good one. So my first one is create a clear strategic recruitment strategy to the first team. That sounds good, doesn't it, Earl? But what does that mean? So basically, identifying targets for Unai Emery that Unai Emery needs, but I think a little bit of a shift away from each window. What do we want? I think sometimes I feel like we get to a window and it's like we go for something, but is that what we really want? As the window evolves, was that first target? So I think the big thing about Olabe that I've been reading about is that he's strategic in the way that he plans for a transfer window, and his recruitment strategy follows a plan. And we're going to sort of get it to the nitty-gritty parts of all of this as well. Also, the big part for me is to recruit for the 26-27 season, which I think is going to be a bit of a rebuild for Aston Villa. I think having a clear strategy of what Emery wants his team to look like when we get there. And I think that will have incomings and outgoings. And also within this strategy, to have a clear reason for selling players, not just, oh, we need to sell someone for this. Like, why is this player leaving? I want to see the reason why he's left. You know what I mean? Rather than it just being, okay, it could be you, or it could be you, or that's no good for me. That's not a clear vision of a strategy, really. And I feel like we have had a little bit of a scattergun approach on some sales. It's just sort of just, yeah, you can go and we'll get rid of you. And I think why I want this clear identity is because I think Monchi had a very difficult job. I think Monchi's job was to sign players, obviously. But first of all, he had to work around PSR in certain windows. Another window, he had PSR. Then he had another window of SDR. And I imagine to recruit for those initial like permutations that have come up and set of rules, it's very difficult to follow your plan because there's different things that are jumping out that you've got to sort of navigate. And I actually feel like now we've been working with UEFA and we've got this plan of, say, 3 years. I think we're a lot clearer with what direction we need to go in and what the landscape of the rules look like. Whereas Monchi didn't have that when he came in. He's like being up, down, this is it, him, that's it, him, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I think Olabe now can come in and go, what am I working with? And we're working with these 3 years of UEFA. We can see what money we need to spend. We can see where the wages lie. So I actually feel like Olabe has probably got a better base to work with. So that would be my first one, to have this strategy locked in. Earl, you can comment on mine or you can drop your first one.
Yeah, well, I think this might end up being a bit of a short episode because we usually tend to come up with the same ideas, even though we've not spoken. But yeah, that was my big one as well. Was I think the way I wrote it was have a coherent transfer strategy. So, like you're saying, just a transfer strategy that's more more focused, more strategic, and that applies to both incomings and outcomings, like you were saying. So we're not disrupting the squad. Nobody knows who's going, who's staying, that sort of thing. So, yeah, just being a bit more strategic. And then one thing I'd add to what you were saying as well is, I think the strategy needs to move away a little bit from focusing on names. I think we focus on
Yeah.
big name transfers a bit too often, I think. So maybe moving away from that.
Yeah, so me and we really don't know what each other has written, and you just touched on one of my other ones. But we'll go for number 2 now. So my next one is to recruit young players with a clear pathway to the first team. Now, this isn't going out and signing Nedeljkovic. It isn't going out and signing players of that ilk that we, again, strategically don't have a pathway for them to meet the first team. So also, when you're signing players like young players, a lot of things can happen, can't they? Like injuries, or they don't settle in England, and you've got all these different things that can look so far away to actually reaching the first team. But I think this is all part of my roadmap of signing a young player with a view of actually playing for Aston Villa. But then within that plan, sort of how are we going to get there with this player? So, yeah, you first come in, you might spend 6 months with the under-23s. Then you might go out on loan to this club. This is the level that we see you playing at for a season. Then, do you see what I'm trying to get at with those examples? And I think I look at a lot of what Olabe's done, and some of the young players that he brought in, like he touched on, like Marino, Odegaard, and he's been really big on his time of having that development through to actually making the Real Sociedad first team. You look at players like Zubamendi, etc. So I think that's something that I would like to see happen. But again, it's different to kind of what we have been doing, where for some of these players, I just don't see them playing for Aston Villa. So, one player that I'd look at would probably be someone like Redmond. I just don't see him playing for Aston Villa. And I know we've probably tried to flip and sell players for financials, but I think we've just got to move away from that for me. So that would be my second one, that players get developed for Villa rather than sort of coming in. We get to an approach where we're like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. That's how it feels for me. Stockpiling, I think. What your thoughts?
So my number 2 was pretty similar again to yours. So mine was be a champion of the academy and build a pathway for youth to the first team. So again, very, very similar to what you were saying. You can look at it as well from a financial perspective, FFP, or these sorts of things as well. There's always a focus on selling youth team players, to realize that they're also like fairly inexpensive players in terms of wages and these sorts of things. You don't have to pay a transfer for them. So there are financial benefits, not just in selling them, but also playing them as well, I think. Having less, you don't have to rely on buying in stopgap players who you don't really want, and then they end up just being on the bench and then pushed out to being fringe players, and it's wasted wages. Could we just promote a player from the academy? Obviously, they have to be good enough and these sorts of things. But yeah, I think we've seen quite a few good players come through. Bogard is obviously the recent one. We've seen Hemmings, Jimo Aloba, who I quite liked in pre-season. Can we get them a few more chances rather than maybe bringing in a stopgap player, like I say? And yeah, it just builds a bit of a stronger club identity, I guess, or however you want to phrase it. You feel a bit more linked with your club when you see these young players coming through, I think.
Yeah, I think you bang on. You've added great value to what was my second point, where I was saying recruit them. Well, maybe you don't have to recruit them. Maybe we've already got them. And for someone like Bogard, for example, for me, Emery is a master at developing players. I look at, and I've been a real big advocate for Guesson, and I'm seeing a lot of people online going, I don't see what he does. Like I don't see it, but I think sometimes like patience is key with players, and just allow them that little bit of time just to bed in and get used to things, because we've seen Emery with Bogard. I mean, the player that he's become in such a short space of time, coaching, time on the training ground, given the opportunities, given belief, but also challenged. Because I saw something, a quote from Emery saying about Bogard, and it was like we're coaching him, we're learning him, but we're also punishing him. And punishing is quite a strong word to use for, say, like a 21-year-old kid, but like make him want it, make him have to think about things and challenge the player. And I think Emery's brilliant at that, because if you want to play for Emery, you've got to show technical ability. You've got to want to play for him. And I think that embodies what Bogard's done for Aston Villa. Well, I reckon I've got one here now. My third one, I'm not sure whether you're going to have this one, but I've just put scout. Right? I don't know whether you've got that, but scout. What do I mean by that? Obviously, like scout players, but I've got written down as a sub part. It's like profile build and search for specific traits in players. And one element of this is, and it kind of ties into my fifth point, but I won't go there yet, is that traits that sometimes we don't have. So, for example, penalty taker. Now, I watched Nick Waltemade, who me and Earl did a little show on in the summer talking about him, take a penalty for Newcastle. And it was so techie, the way he slowly like pitter-pattered up to the ball, and his left foot kind of like swooped left and he hit it top corner. Things like that, we're crying out for a penalty taker and we don't have one. So when we're looking for, say, an attacking player, maybe elements of being able to suit those characteristics that we don't have. And I think my big point that I wrote down here is like future building, not just name. And that's what you said for your one. Not just the name. We don't need just the name. Like, just the name is very expensive. And yeah, it was probably the market that we might have been in, and Emery might have wanted right now. But at times, there's better than sort of just that name. And I go back to a player. I keep mentioning him because, apparently we were linked to him in the summer. Semenyo. The kid was playing for Bristol City. And he went to Bournemouth for like £16 million. And we're then in a market looking at, I don't know, like some player for, say, well, we're looking at like Paqueta for what? 50, 60? But you can find these players. And I just think it's really important that we do really start to expand our scouting and unearth these gems, that some of them might not just be really young. There could be a 23 ready right now, pick up and play. And I just think that's also really, really important. What's your third one?
It's exactly the same again.
No, it's not.
Pretty much. So my third one is improve the scouting network.
Oh my God.
Use data, cast a wider net. So like you were saying about, it does seem we kind of shop in the same kind of markets and leagues, consistently. So I'm saying, yeah, cast a wider net. Similar to what you're saying as well, like focus on attributes that the team is lacking. But what I would add as well is, and I think this is an interesting one in terms of data, because you can use data for this as well, I guess. But pay a closer attention to players' injury history, because it seems like we sign a lot of players who get injured. So yeah, I would include that in the scouting process. But yeah, pay more attention to injury history.
Onana was injured a lot at Everton, so I fully agree with that one. Do you think is it a training issue though, or not? Because we seem to, and Chelsea have got a lot of injuries at the minute. But you know, sometimes when you look at teams and you go, right, that team that season were injured a lot. The following season, surely they're not going to get that many injuries. But it does feel like last season we had a lot of injuries towards the end of the Conference League season. We had a lot, and this season we've got injuries, and it just feels like, why don't we ever have like a whole fully fit squad for say 6 months? Like we haven't had that for. I remember when we had that because I made a little TikTok when Emery done a presser, and he was like, "We've got a fully fit squad. Everybody's available." It lasted 2 weeks, and someone else then got injured. And it's like, I don't understand what that is.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be injuries, aren't they? I mean, you can't get away from that fact. There are always going to be injuries, but I think there are just certain ones. I guess Onana, you could say, where it's just seems very obvious that injuries are a problem. So yeah, I don't think it's probably something that we're never going to be able to completely get rid of. But just try and stay away from those obvious ones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, Onana back going to Belgium on international duty. It smells of getting a knock, coming back and not being available to me. But hopefully I'm wrong. But I wouldn't have liked him to have gone. I know some people are saying that he can go get minutes and etc. But I feel like with him, he needs just wrapping up and just sort of like unboxing on Christmas Day and playing him and then wrapping him back up again. But I don't know. It is a difficult one with injuries. Right, this one, you can't have this one, right? You can't have this one because I feel like it's me going like left field here now. Keep Emery aligned with the strategy. Have you got that one or not?
Yeah,
No.
so I said so similar. I said support Unai Emery with developing the philosophy and playing style.
That's exactly the same, right? That's exactly the same. So I'll say what I mean by that. You so what I mean by that is we get to a window and Olabe is prepared for the window coming up, and Emery goes, I want this player. I want this total profile player. And Olabe goes, no, stick to the plan. This is the vision. This is what we're working towards. Or if we have recruited a player that's kind of a bit similar, that's a bit younger, we go, no, we've got this player. He's coming through. We've signed him recently, etc. Bring him through, push him, etc. So that's what I want. Because even though Monchi probably was like ahead of recruitment, and we're hearing like Emery had the final say, and I imagine he probably might have this final say. They'll work together. I kind of want Olabe to sometimes challenge Emery a little bit, and I think that will keep Emery in line a little bit more, and it'll keep him more focused. And I think that relationship will be quite good because at the same time, I'm not saying that I felt like Monchi was a bit of a yes man. I felt like he'd probably just do anything for Emery, and you don't want that. I don't think you want that. You know, if Emery was the one pushing for someone, and do you know what I mean? So I just feel like stick to the plan, stick to the vision. Obviously, give him what he needs because I always believe that if you give Emery the tools, he'll do the job. But yeah, stick to the plan is my point. What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, word for word, mate. I said,
Oh no.
I said, build a strategy, challenge Emery, have a good working relationship, but don't be a yes man.
Oh no, you didn't put yes, man.
Yeah, so yeah, word for word. But I mean, it's the manager's job, isn't it, to win games? So naturally, you're gonna build a kind of short term mindset from that, just naturally, because with the pressure from the fans and and just modern day football. I guess it's all about winning games, so that's completely understandable. But I think Olabe needs to be the counterbalance to that. So he needs to keep the bigger picture in mind, and provide that bit of balance with Emery. And I think he's, based on his credentials, you think he'll be able to do that. He's a footballing man, isn't he? He's played the game, he's coached, he's been a sporting director. So I think it could be a good match. I think he could be well positioned to do those things we're talking about.
Definitely spot on. Right, this is for 5 out of 5 now. Right, so I'll put it on the thumbnail, and it is kind of like a little bit of like a wild one, but I have actually put find the next Isaac, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I don't actually mean go and find someone as good. I kind of do actually, but for me, I love Ollie Watkins. I think he's been brilliant for Villa. But this next striker signing for Villa has got to be perfect, because I feel like we're getting to the end of a bit of a cycle with Watkins, and I feel like we're going to move into an area where he will need replacing, and I think this signing, especially for me, is just really important. Again, I spoke about penalty takers. I spoke about, all this development, all this growing. But when he gets replaced, it's got to be top level. It's got to be suited to Emery's system. What does Emery want? It's got to have longevity. I feel like a striker signing always has to have a little bit more longevity. I don't know, like a wingy. I feel like with a wingy, you can kind of like chop and change, sign one, sign a number 10, etc. But the striker, you've got to get it right, because these are your goals for, say, the next 3 or 4 seasons. And we've had a striker that we've got massive amounts of not profit, but we've actually got so much out of him. No one would have imagined when Watkins joined Villa, he'd be Aston Villa's record Premier League goal scorer. I'd never imagine him scoring a goal in the Euros. I would never imagine him leading the line for so many years. And he's done all of that. But we will have to sign another striker eventually. And I think, for me, I think in the summer's probably the time when we will be signing another striker. So it's a bit of a different one to the others, but I think for me, this is a big one that position has to get right. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, my fifth one is different this time, but I'll give my thoughts on yours. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I'd echo similar as well for goalkeeper, I think, as well. I think those are 2 similar, but I guess polar opposite positions, but similar in a way that they're, I think they're just so crucial for the team. And, it's a similar situation, with Watkins, as we got with Emi Martinez as well. Maybe getting on in years. We know he wanted to leave, all that kind of stuff. We brought in Beezer. He's done very well, but I still think the question in that position is probably unanswered as to the next era at Aston Villa. They both, the goalkeepers that we have right now are obviously great goalkeepers. We've seen that, but they don't seem like the next era of Aston Villa. So I would add that in with the striker as well.
What's your last one?
My last one is improve the starting 11.
That's that's not. It's kind of similar. I wouldn't say you'd improve it straight away with signing another striker, but kind of.
Yeah, it depends who you sign, but yeah, my fifth one was improve the starting 11. I mean, we've seen it for the past few seasons, and even this season, we've got 7, 8, 9 of the starting 11 are all players who predate Emery. So I guess that kind of a bit damning on the the transfers of the past 3 seasons, but yeah, improve the starting 11. So I think we've talked about signing young players for the future and this sort of thing, but there does need to be a balance of signing players who are good enough for the 11. So either we think can come in and contribute and play right away, or someone who we think at least has the potential to to break into the starting 11 within, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, let's say.
Mm-hmm. I believe that Olabe has got a big job. He's got this is a big job on his hands here, I think, to I wouldn't say it's a big job in the sense of he's come into Villa and he's massively got to take us from, say, bottom of the league to where we want to go. But I think the magnitude of probably what he's got to do is quite large. And I feel like I'll ask you a question then. So here's a scenario, right? And I want you to tell me whether you would agree for it to happen, or you would say, wait, okay. So we get to January and we've got the ability to do what we did, say, last January. So in January, we can go out and get a Rashford, go out and get an Asensio, go out and get Marlon and sort of risk it. Or would you say we should wait for the summer and do business differently? What would you do? Because I think this is probably the biggest comparison, maybe what you'd get with Monchi or Olabe, really. And one will tell you one thing and the other will tell you something else.
I'm going to go with the cop-out answer and say somewhere in the middle. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think with last season, it was blatantly obvious, I think, that we needed something. And I don't think doing nothing would have been enough for the rest of the season. So I don't think we would have finished as high as we did if we'd have done nothing. But at the same time, I think we went too far. I don't think we needed Rashford, Asensio, and Marlon. The three of those. Did we need three attackers, especially as we didn't really play one of those at all? So it's about the balance that we always talk about. Is maybe sign one or two of them instead of all three. Assess what we need, but I think we just went too far with it. So it's just having those limits and the strategy in place beforehand. We should have a good idea of what we need in January. We should have a good idea of what we need in the next summer transfer window. So when we get to January, we don't have to have a mad scramble and then bring in three massively expensive players.
Cool. Right, Earl. This is part one of a two-part episode, because part two, we have a Real Sociedad presenter who's going to talk to us about Roberto Olabe's time at Real Sociedad. So me and Earl, as Villa fans, we've pinpointed what we would like to see happen. And then this Spanish guy is going to come on and probably tell us that everything we've said he can't do. And we've massively got him wrong. But no, I think we're on the right line. So I'm going to interview a Real Sociedad radio presenter, and he's going to tell us everything about him. I'll ask him more nitty-gritty recruitment, strategy, scouting, players that he's brought through, maybe unsuccessful signings, etc. And we'll be able to get a real good landscape of how Real Sociedad fans have viewed his time at their club. I imagine it's pretty good because he's, developed some really good players that have been at Sociedad for quite a long time. So I feel like I might not have needed you for this one, Earl. I got 4 out of 5 right myself.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that next episode with the Sociedad expert. I guess you'll have to get practicing your Spanish.
Yeah. So I'm recording that today. So we'll see that one come out in a couple of days' time as well. So anyway, thanks for coming on, mate.